AskReddit.
Disney theme park characters. Have there been situations where you had to break character? What was the reason? Consequences?
I auditioned to be a face character in Disneyland and made it to the stage where they run through scenarios of unruly guests, rude comments, etc., and you have to respond and come up with responses in character. My dance teacher was a face more than 20 years ago, and she had all kinds of stories of people trying to reach up her skirt. She was Pocahontas mainly. In the end, I'm glad I didn't make it through. At the time it was like barely above min wage, which was like $6.75 per hour or something like that. In 1996, my mom and dad yelled at some teenager for being inappropriate to Pocahontas when she was leaning over to take pictures with my 4-year-old sister. When he left, my mom said, "I know you can't yell at him, but we sure as hell can." Pocahontas just smiled and kept taking pictures with kids, but you could tell by the look in her eyes that she was happy about it. Maybe it was your dance teacher.
What kind of a piece of shit sexually harasses Disney cast members? Goddamn, I hope each one of them die miserable and alone. The kind of a piece of shit who sexually harasses people in general. I think it's worse to harass people who can't leave and can't fight back. Like, any kind of harassment is bad, but it takes a special type of predator to specifically go after a victim who has no escape and no recourse. Maybe someone who actually played Tarzan can confirm this for me. Disneyland used to have a Tarzan character, but you don't see him anymore. Since the characters are always expected to pose for photos and selfies, and Tarzan wore nothing but a loincloth, women were constantly grabbing the actor's ass when they got in close. So, the park just quit that character. Update. After some confirmation of the bad behavior, there are still recent Tarzan sightings. It appears Disney paused the character and redesigned his loincloth costume into one more like a pair of shorts and a jungle vine sash. Apparently, women are still grabby, but the costume department tried to make it a little less easy. We saw Tarzan at the Animal Kingdom at DW a few years ago. His costume was kind of skimpy, but definitely more than a loincloth. They changed it. You can look up the differences too. It used to be a loincloth, but because of what Op was talking about, they changed it to have a bit more. Princess Jasmine's outfit was changed for the same reason. Source. My mom was a character coordinator at WDW.
On a Disney cruise I met a guy who looked exactly like Peter Pan. When we asked him, he said nope, Peter Pan has brown eyes or something like that. The next day when we went to get a picture with Peter, he got super close and whispered, "See? Peter has brown eyes, hands down best Disney employee I've ever met." He was also Pluto. The guy referencing he knows Peter Pan's eye color should be a dead giveaway. Oh yeah, absolutely. Meeting him just confirmed it.
I watched Jack Sparrow talking to a kid when the kid started puking everywhere. He said too much of the old apple juice, eh? Been there myself? He even ran out once. All the while, the kid is just projectile vomiting everywhere. I just wanna say that there is a video on YouTube of some meathead trash talking Gaston about how he could beat him in a push-up match. They go at it, meathead gives up, and Gaston cranks out a few more one-handed push-ups just to rub it in. Talk about character.
A bit late, but I did a college program at WDW. Never saw a character break when I worked audience control for parades. Definitely saw a few fully costumed characters puke in their heads, and Prince Naveen once got heat exhaustion and managed to leave the parade route fully in character. Once the parade was over, we saw him in the back almost completely passed out. Typically the parade will just speed up to double time if a character actor is in distress. What happens if you puke in there? How could you tell? Was it from heat exhaustion? Definitely heat exhaustion. Orlando get hot, and I remember my shoes being basically melted from a summer on the pavement. I worked the CP from January to August parades for the last couple of months. Not sure how they clean out the heads' costumes, but the most obvious puking incident from memory, this was like 8 years ago, summer 2011, so I'm a bit rusty, was Pinocchio. Right about when the daytime major afternoon parade rounded into Frontierland, Pinocchio sort of stopped performing. Stopped dancing and waving, basically, lurched as far forward as his mounts on the float would allow. His handler ran up to the float, said something, and then we were working much faster on the route to remove the parade ropes. Our group wasn't very close with entertainment, they're quite insular, but working around them, we picked up a lot of non-verbal cues. Lol. Someone close to the characters later was like, "Oh yeah, vomit everywhere."
I was at Disneyland once, and the sheriff of Nottingham was fake menacing a child. He reached out to touch the kid's balloon and for some reason it popped. The character actor was clearly stunned. A new balloon appeared less than 30 seconds later. I remember being in Disneyland Paris when I was 9 and had just gotten a baby Simba plush which I brought to dinner in one of those character meeting restaurants where the characters come to your table. Most characters pretended to coo at and tickle Simba. Sheriff of Nottingham kidnapped Simba. I of course got him back. It just took a dramatic, fake tug of war between Mr. Incredible and Sheriff of Nottingham to do it. Seriously, these guys were good. My best memory was in 1997. I went to Florida Disney for my 7th birthday. My mum and dad took me to a character breakfast, basically like you have breakfast and the characters are all there doing the rounds. My mum walks off to do something, I assumed ordering food, and we all sit down blah blah blah. The next thing my mum goes, "Where have all the characters gone?" Next thing the lights turn off and my name comes onto the tannoy saying it's my birthday. Then suddenly a guy comes out of the kitchen holding a birthday cake and every single character working at the time behind him, following the cake to my table. Turns out if it was your birthday one character would come and say hi, do their thing and that's it. My mum didn't ask for anything, but I found out she bought the cake and brought it to park. My assumption is that since my mum brought the cake and that we were obviously from England they decided to make it special. Lots of incredibly jealous parents and kids in that room afterwards. Still the best day of my life, and I'm 29.
Ex-cast member here. While not a character myself, I did have to work the parade route from time to time, making sure kids didn't dart out in front of floats and such. Friends of characters would often be playful with CMs along the parade route. Winking, making silly faces, etc. There was one day where Baloo came up to me mid-dance and proceeded to bow to me. Baloo also happened to be wearing some sort of crown hat thing with a star on the top. Baloo probably wasn't aware of how tall that actually made them. Baloo managed to smack me right in the mouth with that star, cutting it open and giving me a fat lip. Fairly certain I heard Baloo audibly gasp when they stood upright again. Paused to mouth. Immediately stopped dancing. Just stared at me as I bled. They tried to grab my hands and pull me to them, but their handler came and ushered them along. Oops.
I have a close friend who was Woody for a while at Disneyland. He said that one time the float caught on fire during a show and they had to play it off completely in character. They danced around it and had to quickly get it backstage to deal with the problem. He said they played it off well enough that no one seemed to notice there wasn't any panic. He said he had never seen an instance of anyone breaking character because everyone was very well trained and there's always at least 6 or so cameras that can see you at all times. I also one time offered an unopened water bottle to an employee when it was near 100 degrees and he said if anyone at Disney saw that, he would be fired. They can't take anything from guests. He also mentioned the cameras constantly watching both crew and patrons. Edit. I texted my friend to confirm and he has given me another story to share. One time an acrobat fell off a float, face planted into the ground and knocked herself out. They had to surround her in a circle and dance in sync as they dragged her body away. They played it off well and apparently no one noticed. I wasn't a character but was a cast member. I was walking from backstage into the park. If you've seen the transitions, they are S-shaped to keep people from peeking in. I was pushing a dolly hand cart. The ones we used had 2 long supports sticking out from the end. As I was going though Winnie the Pooh was walking in from the other side. I hit him or her square in the leg with it. Hearing Winnie the Pooh say fuck was a pretty damn funny.